The hydromancer, as the name may suggest, is a shaper and wielder of water, capable of wondrous and terrible things in equal measure. The Confederacy of Worlds as a whole obeys very strenuous laws in regards to magic and its usage, a holdover from the reign of the sorceress queen remembered solely as the Matriarch, and the times of strife that followed her eventual defeat at the hands of the Immortal. The shock of her death prompted the closure of the gates to the ways until they reactivated millennia later, bringing with their opening the first children to change the face of the apex firmament forever, much in the manner of their forebears. Any individual exhibiting magical abilities faces three options: conscription into the Red Guard if they are deemed capable enough, imprisonment, or death. This law excludes the Avil, who have been allowed to operate under their own cultural dictates since the formation of the Confederacy. The Red Guard are the Confederacy's own and only metaphysical combat forces, held at no more than 10 strictly controlled and monitored teams of 4 practitioners. These represent the 4 basic elements of earth, air, water and fire, working singly or in tandem to create horrifying and dazzling displays. Upon making inquiries with old family contacts within the Guard, I was informed that all practitioners were occupied off-world out on the fringes save one. A team had been sent to Crescent 4 within the Calenhad cluster to help counter a large cult, apparently possessing magic users who had already eliminated many of the local Guard forces sent to purge them. I made the acquaintance of Hydromancer Malthus when I was inadvertently caught in the midst of what turned out to be some of the final confrontations between the cult and the Red Guard. They had arrived and met determined but inadequate resistance from self-trained novices more than capable of dealing with the main body of the Guard, yet outclassed against those few allowed to train with the Avil. The calm afternoon street lined with factories for the manufacture of various goods was now shut down and quiet for the weekly day of rest observed across the Confederacy. Muffled shouts drew my attention an instant before the steel loading door of a warehouse was torn from its frame to burst through the face of the building across from it. Glancing out from the doorway I had backed into, I marked the man that stepped through the gap, dressed in what seemed a standard Guard uniform. Then I noted the rebreather obscuring the lower half of his face, the heavily reinforced reservoirs attached to his belt and pack, and the faint disturbance in the air surrounding him, like a heat mirage. He whirled at the sound of a shout from within the structure at his back, diving sideways behind the cover of the warehouse wall while jagged streaks of superheated air tore across the lane into the opposite building. He rose slowly, waiting, hands weaving through the space before him while his element gathered in a whirling foaming orb between them. The woman came out heedless of any possible danger, and I quite nearly felt pity for her before the hydromancer released his waters in a spread of high-pressure jets. Punching through the steel-plated leather armor and cap beneath her singed and tattered cloak as if through paper, the cultist fell dead in her tracks to the horrified and rage-filled screams and shouts of those still within. As Malthus backed quickly away from the ruined doorway, I saw the waters gather before his hands from the air itself aided by a thin flow of shimmering material from the canisters. He whipped his arms forward and the 2 leading cultists, a middle-aged man whose bare fist was engulfed in guttering flames and a young woman carrying a short wide-bladed sword, fell spurting blood from the clean separation where their heads once joined their necks. He stumbled backwards as a half-dozen more humans dashed out from the warehouse led by a squat heavily muscled man wildly swinging a double-bladed battle axe. The cultists fell in quick succession attended by the hum and sharp cracks of my sidearm, a model I myself created employing electromagnetic acceleration to fire metal shavings at lethal velocity, adapting the concept from the large railguns featured on Confederate warships. Malthus glanced quickly back over his shoulder and marked my presence with obvious recognition. The commander's message had been received. He nodded his thanks, returning his attention to the warehouse doors and motioning for me to remain where I was while more cries and shouts came from deeper within the building. They diminished until there was the sound of a hollow metallic bang, evidently the reinforced door to some inner sanctum. The man's head lowered in what could only be annoyance, and I sensed he was having a conversation inaudible to me through his rebreather's built-in comm, his expression different whenever his attention shifted back to me. Finally nodding, he motioned me forward to join him, hugging the wall not far from the silent gaping maw of the doorway while I quickly conned the street and hurried across to stand at his back. Without turning, he spoke the only words I would hear him utter, voice slightly mechanical through the modulation of the rebreather. "You've been trained. Not a question. 30 seconds, then follow me in, watch my back and Immortal's balls, for your own sake leave me room to work. Then he was moving and I vented the small buildup of heat in my sidearm while the countdown started in the corner of my vision. 10 seconds passed, then a sound reached my ears and I cancelled the countdown, darting into the building towards the noise. I crossed the immense empty loading area, heading up a shallow ramp through another high wide doorway. Entering the space beyond, I spotted the dim figure of Malthus standing near the back of a large conference room, attention on whatever barrier lay before him, legs braced, arms outstretched with hooked hands while the sounds of destruction continued. The enormous circular steel door that came into view as I circled the room, easily 4 meters in diameter, appeared to be leaking in multiple spots, though not a drop fell while the hydromancer attempted to pull it from its place. With a cry of enormous effort, Malthus rushed backwards on a sudden torrent of water that erupted beneath his feet, bringing the door with him in a discordant symphony of twisting metal and shattering concrete. Panting, the hydromancer glanced in my direction as I strove to keep my expression stoic in the face of such power. Looking around the man to the chamber beyond where a wide elevator platform waited, descending into unknown depths below the factory, I motioned for him to lead. Taking up position on the platform, we crouched behind gathered crates and containers while the machinery of the elevator rumbled around us, delivering us into the arms of the matron's disciples.
Information redacted.
Following the operation, Hydromancer Alec Malthus was tried under court-martial and summarily executed for willfully disobeying orders and killing potential Red Guard recruits. A hydromancer is by definition an extreme threat when the water content of our own bodies is taken into account. A practitioner of sufficient raw ability may learn to become a cryomancer, shifting water to ice and vice versa as the situation warrants, an nephelomancer controlling mists and fogs, or a chloromancer, utilizing all manners of plant life as they desire.